In fact, Donald Trump displays some of the most debilitating pathologies known to psychiatry that wreak greater havoc on whatever society, community, institution, or even family that they are a part of. But they are often also some of the most successful. But this is their survival mechanism. If they do not have a core, if they do not have a conscience or compassion, they can mimic anything and then rise to the top. Then we see the consequences of their debilitation.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. My guest today is Dr. Bandy Lee, who is a psychiatrist who authored the 2017 runaway New York Times bestseller, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, which warned about the dangers of Trump's mental instability and the threat it posed to the country. She has since edited an update, The More Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 40 psychiatrists and mental health experts warn anew. Dr. Lee, the last time we talked, you were sounding the alarm again about the threat that a second Trump term would pose to the country. We're in it now. What's your assessment?
Well, civilization is being dismantled and institutions are being taken apart. It's happening at the rate where destruction is assured. And they've already figured out that by the time courts respond, the agencies that have been holding our society together will have been gutted, closed, or changed forever. This is exactly what I had been afraid of. In fact, I had a vision of this early in 2017, which is why I felt so desperate to organize a conference that I did at Yale School of Medicine, and then to assemble the nation's most renowned psychiatrists and psychologists to come together for the dangerous case of Donald Trump. Well, Adam Serwer of The Atlantic coined the phrase, cruelty is the point. I would take that further to say, destruction is the point. That is the nature of mental pathology. Death and destruction are its goal, and whatever explanations or reasons it gives is the means. Of course, before Donald Trump, I had been warning for a good 10 years about what was to come by warning against what I call structural violence, which is the increasing inequality in society, which gives rise to behavioral violence, our tolerance for violence, and then attraction to dangerous and violent leaders. And so what we're seeing right now is the end product of a long process.
I really appreciate that your focus generally is on the pathology of violence and less on individuals, less on Donald Trump himself. And I'm drawn to this quote from a recent Substack of yours where you wrote, "That is why I always emphasize that I was not really speaking about Donald Trump. Donald Trumps are a dime a dozen in my practice, but my job is to keep them contained, to manage them, and to protect society from them." You're talking about some of the most violent criminals in society, many of which you had as patients or who you assessed as a clinical psychiatrist. You have a deep understanding of the pathology of violence, and that is what made Donald Trump such an interesting subject for you as an academic matter.
Exactly. I wasn't speaking about an individual in particular or about a political matter. I was purely addressing the issue from the phenomenology of violence, which I've studied for 25 years, and the public health ramifications it would have.
One of Donald Trump's particular elements of genius, and I use that word in describing Donald Trump very sparingly, but he seems to have figured out that if he delegates to people like Elon Musk and J.D. Vance some of the most egregious excesses of his ambitions that he can skate by. He can get an ovation at the Super Bowl while Elon Musk dismantles the government and while J.D. Vance sets the stage for defying the courts. You talked about running roughshod over the law and waiting for it to catch up. I think that now appears to be a deliberate strategy. They have figured out that they can move quicker than any other institution of American government, especially those that exist to check executive power.
Yes, exactly. That is what they do. In fact, Donald Trump displays some of the most debilitating pathologies known to psychiatry that wreak greater havoc on whatever society, community, institution, or even family that they are a part of. But they are often also some of the most successful. It's not because they're geniuses, but this is their survival mechanism. If they do not have a core, if they do not have a conscience or compassion, they can mimic anything and then rise to the top. Then we see the consequences of their debilitation. So Adolf Hitler was called the seismograph of crowds because he could sense the mood of the crowds before him better than anyone and direct it to whichever end he has in mind, which are always, of course, eventually destructive and self-destructive ends. And Donald Trump is no different. He is able to sense what he needs to say and do in order to garner the kinds of support he needs from the crowds to simply hijack the agenda and make the unacceptable accepted.
Many of us assumed that much of the energy of his second term would be directed towards performative politics and that he wouldn't actually get very much done. He would come in as a lame duck president. There would be ambitious Republicans around him who are looking for their second act. But most of us didn't anticipate Elon Musk. I'm wondering if you did. We just had Bill Kristol on. I mean, some of the smartest political thinkers, right, in this arena did not anticipate the power that Elon Musk would be given. In fact, I can't remember which guest, I'm sure my audience will remember, but we had someone say right after the election, Elon Musk won't be able to do anything. He doesn't actually have power. The power lies with the Rust votes and the others. A lot of us got that wrong. As a psychiatrist, you must be fascinated by Elon Musk as well. Did you see any of this coming?
Well, I was extremely frightened of his rise because the kind of magnetic attraction that both he and Donald Trump had indicates the level of pathology they both hold. Both see each other as kind of a parent figure. That's what they seek. And what they would not do for each other while they are idealizing each other. Of course, that eventually turns into devaluation. That's the primitive form of relating, which also happened with Steve Bannon. But until he is ousted, he will wreak as much havoc as possible. And it's not just Elon Musk. It's Benjamin Netanyahu. It's Vladimir Putin. It's all these figures who display the same kinds of defects, which should have precluded such individuals from rising to the presidency in the first place, which is why I felt so important that it was so important for mental health experts to speak up, especially since we do not have a mechanism for screening out unfit individuals as we do for corporate leadership, for example, or any other job that deals with life or death matters.
Are you looking for something simple and delicious to add to your wellness routine? You've got to try Manacora honey. For years, I've been using honey instead of sugar as a sweetener. And let me tell you, nothing beats Manacora. It has a rich flavor and a caramel-like texture that puts all other honey to shame. And it's ethically produced by Manicora's master beekeepers in the remote forests of New Zealand. The bees collect the nectar from the Manuka tea tree, and the end result is a honey packed with bioactives and 3 times more antioxidants and prebiotics than your average honey. Manicora contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health, including a special antibacterial compound called MGO. Those levels are verified with third-party testing. But honestly, the taste alone sells it for me. The nutritional and health benefits are a great bonus, but I'm telling you, nothing compares to the deliciousness of Manicora honey. And now it's easier than ever to try it. Head to manicora.com/Ken to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 plus Manuka honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. That's manicora.com/Ken for $25 off your starter kit. Hey everyone, it's Ken. I've got another amazing writing retreat to share with you. The last one in Archeron, France is full, but another has opened up and it sounds just as incredible. It's in the Italian countryside, not far from Rome, and it's hosted by 2 award-winning writing coaches, Athena Dixon and Anne-Marie Kelly. Just imagine writing in a place like this. Telling stories is what makes us human, and we all have those stories in our pockets about love and loss, joy and grief. Let Anne-Marie and Athena help you lay your stories on the page. You'll gather each morning in an historic Italian village to focus on craft and storytelling. And afternoons will be spent with local artisans passionate about sharing their culture and traditions. This once-in-a-lifetime retreat is for women of all ages and experiences who long to build community, search for answers, and dismantle the roadblocks that stand in your way. Athena and Anne-Marie practice writing as a form of healing, and don't we all need that right now? If you want to write beautiful prose in a beautiful place, join Athena and Anne-Marie at Strada Toscana. No more excuses. This world-class coaching team will help you put your stories on paper in an amazing setting. Join them in Italy this fall. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. Thanks. I am way behind on understanding the intricacies of these diagnoses. So can you pick apart? I want to key on what you said about Elon and Trump seeing each other as father figures, and then you're bringing in Putin and others into that. I find that fascinating, and I think you're also pointing to an eventual dissolution of that, because we can all see, even though Trump can't, how this is going to end, how it ends with everyone who enters his destructive black hole orbit. But how are they relating on an emotional level to each other?
Well, essentially, the kinds of wounds they are exhibiting have to do with developmental issues. And so when development is stunted, when it is regressed because of stress, which also happens to societies, the kinds of narcissistic traits become prominent. It is a developmental wound where one is constantly searching for a parent figure. I write more about this as a societal phenomenon, not so much as a diagnosis, but as what occurs in societies that are under stress. In the book where I predicted Donald Trump's violence after the 2020 election, in Profile of a Nation, Trump's Mind, America's Soul, where I stated that the 2 main dynamics that are happening in society are narcissistic symbiosis and shared psychosis. Now, narcissistic symbiosis is when a narcissistically wounded, in other words, developmentally wounded leader rises to public prominence. They will magnetically attract others who are similarly narcissistically wounded, because they're constantly looking for that ideal parent figure who will take over, take care of them, solve problems for them, and he knows, because he knows intricately what that feeling is about, that he would project himself as that savior figure, that he alone can solve everything. He's better than all the experts. But of course, none of that is true. He can't even do the ordinary job of a leader, let alone any job, as a panel of top mental health experts already assessed when the Mueller report came out. It was perhaps not enough to indict him, but it was enough to give us the information we needed to do a fitness evaluation. And he was found not to meet any of the criteria for basic fitness for any job, which was alarming.
It is probably no surprise to you just hearing your description of, give me the phrase again, narcissistic wounds. What's the diagnosis?
Well, I call it narcissistic symbiosis when it happens between a leader-follower relationship, the kinds of magnetic attractions that happen through narcissistic pathology, and therefore it's not a healthy attraction. It is not a well-informed, rational decision to follow a popular leader, but in fact it is a compulsion, an emotional compulsion out of emotional needs.
You probably know where I'm going then, because it can't be a surprise that J.D. Vance, given his upbringing and backstory, fits right in to this narcissistic symbiosis.
Yes. Those who form a tight bond with the current president are most likely to meet those criteria, in that they too are looking for what Donald Trump is purporting to present. And so they're very like-minded, yes.
You didn't happen to overlap with JD at Yale at all. I missed him by a year, although we have run into each other. You never met him, did you?
No, I have not. He has not taken any of my courses, which have to do with compassion and care for those who are imprisoned or those who are seeking asylum. So he hasn't taken any of my courses.
Well, I wish he had. It would have served him well. It would have served all of us well. Can you talk about collective mental health, which is something we touched on in our last conversation, but I think the country needs a dose of it right now, probably more than ever in my lifetime. You have to go back to maybe the 60s or the Civil War to find a time when we are as anxious as we are now.
Yes. Well, from reading my Substacks, you may have recognized that I have shifted direction a little bit, in that I truly believe that we are at a point where we need to address the source of the problem. Now, the source of the problem is that we have structures in place, societally, nationally, and internationally, that facilitate the rise of unfit leaders. And I have been describing, the psychology and the dangerousness of Donald Trump, what that would induce in society. That's what's described in my last book, The Psychology of Trump Contagion, how symptoms can spread throughout society and basically effectuate shared psychosis. Now we need truly to work on the structures that have given rise to this and shape the way we have organized our society to be able to prevent this from happening in the future. And of course, we need to do it rather rapidly. Time is running out. I'm calling it my curriculum for one world or none, trying to bring people together, institute structures that would help unify rather than divide, and to work on healing our collective mental health, so that we can arrive at a place where our decisions will be life-affirming and not pathology or death-promoting.
Can you give us a concrete example of one of the steps that we may take to get there? I hope, the information or disinformation ecosystem is part of this prescription. I haven't read the book yet. I'm gonna order it. But what are some of the things we should be doing?
Yes, absolutely. As you could tell already, the misleading lies, propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, all have a role in causing the deterioration of our collective mental health. In fact, the World Mental Health Coalition, which I've led for the last 7 years, put out a declaration of freedom of mind. And that has to do with the need to safeguard our mental health in order to safeguard all the rest of our freedoms and rights. That is not emphasized enough, either by the United Nations or even in the Constitution. And that is what needs to be known more about, and why mental health education is so critical at this time as at any time. I've been doing mostly consulting behind the scenes now. In fact, the book that you mentioned, The More Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, has been updated to include not 40 psychiatrists and mental health experts who warn anew, but now 50, who are advising 50 of the top mental health experts in the country, who are providing their expertise to whoever would be willing to consult us, be they lawmakers, policymakers, military officers. I'm sure they're suffering greatly right now. That mental health is still front and center and crucial to what we are suffering through right now. And we have the kinds of methods and interventions that apply through any field could deal with the problem.
Well, Dr. Lee, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We'll put all of those links in the show notes below, and I'm sure we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.